This video is sponsored by CuriosityStream and Nebula. I have only one friend, and that is Echo. Why is it my friend? Because I love my sorrow, and Echo does not take it away from me. I have only one confidant, and that is the silence of the night. Why is it my confidant? Because it remains silent. Soren Kierkegaard.
I'm afraid. The weight of your silence is terrible.
I find no one to turn to.
I pray, but I'm lost.
Nothing enters my soul.
Why?
Or am I just praying to nothing?
Where were you?
Nothing. Because you are not there.
It's getting colder outside. Darker too. The leaves are falling and the autumn rainfall has kept me mostly indoors. Feeling moody and reflective, I've been revisiting a particular kind of cinema. Among other films, I've watched Ingmar Bergman's Winter Light and The Seventh Seal, Robert Bresson's Diary of a Country Priest, Tarkovsky's Andrei Rublev, and more recent works like Silence by Martin Scorsese, A Hidden Life by Terrence Malick, and First Reformed by Paul Schrader.
This journal is a form of speaking. It is a form of prayer.
There's just something about these stories of believers going through a crisis of faith that I find deeply resonating. This, however, has always felt rather strange to me as I don't really consider myself a religious person, and so I've been trying to understand where this connection comes from. Why are some of my favorite films either about religious people or made by religious filmmakers? What qualities do they have that other films lack? What makes them resonate with me so deeply?
Remember the day when we first met?
In his review of A Hidden Life, critic Owen Gleiberman referred to the film as cinema at its mightiest and holiest. It's a movie you don't just watch, he wrote. It's a movie you enter, like a cathedral of the senses. Whenever I come across a church, like when I'm on a holiday or visiting a new town or city, I always want to check it out. Even if we put all religious associations aside, I find it's an experience that is unlike any other space really. For one, a lot of them are incredibly big. I mean, look at the size of this thing. It may not be as impressive to someone living in a city like New York, but personally I have never lived in a town or a city where a church was not the defining landmark on the horizon. Plus, it's worth noting that many of them were built long before the first skyscrapers. It is definitely true that churches tend to last. If you take a moment to really look at the impressive foundational structures of columns and arches, at the sheer technical brilliance with which many churches are built, it doesn't seem surprising that they have stood the test of time. Of course, another reason why churches survive is simply because we want them to, because we've made an effort to maintain them, to restore them, and to expand them. It is interesting how, at least here in Europe, you can often read the stones of a church like the rings in a tree, the different materials and patchworks revealing its history, revealing the hardships it had to endure, the wars, fires, and destruction. And again, even when we put all religious associations aside, it is understandable why we'd go through the effort. Churches are beautiful. If you look upon even the most sober churches, the amount of detail that clearly went into their creation is quite astounding. I can't really think of any other type of building that we make with that same apparent aspiration to decorate every part of it, to beautify every nook and cranny. Especially when we're talking about buildings that can generally be found in every town. And all that is just the outer display. Standing inside them with the light coming in from tall windows, transforming through stained glass to cast colors over an interior as intricately designed as the outside. Over the statues, paintings and other artifacts, or even just over the floor and the chairs. It can truly be stunning. But it's a strange sensation too, compared to the richness of nature or the busyness of a city. A church feels empty. hollow. You feel it the moment you step into one. The hard stone surfaces reject any noise cast upon them, leaving them to bounce around the grand open spaces in a slowly fading echo. It makes every sound you make feel like a disturbance, a transgression almost, as if you break some kind of spell by not walking carefully enough, by speaking just a little too loudly, or even by speaking at all.
Vad är det, Thomas?
Dig är det likgiltigt.
Säg i alla fall.
Guds tystnad.
Guds tystnad.
Guds tystnad.
There are many stories that invoke existential wonder, that make us think about the fundamental questions of life. But to me, the appeal of religious films comes from their explicit engagement with them. Religious language, in a way, personifies the mysteries of life, speaks to them directly, in a deliberate search for answers.
Where are you? Why did you create us?
As Kierkegaard once wrote, no one comes back from the dead, no one has entered the world without crying, no one is asked when he wishes to enter life, nor when he wishes to leave. We take a lot of these issues for granted, and understandably so, because we simply cannot spend all our time contemplating the nature of our existence. We just wouldn't get anything done. But sooner or later we all encounter moments where we can no longer look away, where facing these matters head-on becomes unavoidable. As we see in many existential films, this is especially likely to happen when we are confronted with an unexpected tragedy, with injustice or severe hardship, or when we are struggling with a difficult moral decision.
I call out for help just as you call to God. He is silent, but you do not have to be.
In times like these, what we are really doing is questioning the metaphysics of our world. We're asking questions about meaning and purpose, or rather, the apparent lack thereof, not just in the context of our own lives, but in the context of existence in general, which inevitably leads to the question of God.
God help me. Jesus help me. God,
Where were you?
what is it you want of me?
You let a boy die. You do nothing. You let anything happen.
I would die for you if I knew you. Are you here with me?
Jag har aldrig trott på din tro. Jag växte upp i en okristen familj med massor av värme och ömhet och sammanhållning och glädje. Gud och Kristus existerade inte, annat än som vaga begrepp. När jag kom i kontakt med din tro föreföll den mig dunkel och neurotisk. På något sätt grymt känsloladdad och primitiv.
I wasn't raised with religion, at least not explicitly. Technically I was baptized in the Catholic faith, but this was mostly because that's just what people did back then. Like the celebration of Christmas or Easter, it was more of a cultural thing than an explicitly religious one. I still don't know exactly how Catholicism fits into Christianity, which I guess is telling enough about the extent to which religion was talked about and practiced in my immediate environment. I've never prayed, I never saw God as anything real and tangible. The only biblical stories I knew were presented to me in the same way as all the other stories, and so that's pretty much what they became, just stories. In my early years we would attend Mass only on special occasions and holidays, like twice a year at best, but again it was mostly for social and cultural reasons. Back then a church where one was expected to sit still and be quiet was not really a place of interest for a child that wanted to play and make noise, a child whose mind kept drifting away during the dull lectures and formal rituals. Even the host, that little dry piece of sacramental bread received at the end, seemed like a tasteless reward for good behavior. It wasn't before long that we stopped going altogether. And so I grew up mostly secular, grew up in a world that had long since separated church and state, and that was, and still is, increasingly separating religion from culture too, increasingly replacing the dogmas of old with the new, with what is generally seen as the ways of science and reason, with rationality, individual freedom, and general modernity. The stories of this world aren't particularly kind to religion.
What do you think the average IQ of this group is, huh?
And personally I can see why, because despite a lot of people finding value in organized religions, there's no denying it has also been a great source of misery and suffering for many others. Historically speaking, the belief that there's not only a grand plan for the universe, but that we also have access to it, that we know the will of God, has often led to uncritical self-righteousness, fanaticism, and the committing of atrocities masked as just causes.
I put no stock in religion. By the word religion, I've seen the lunacy of fanatics of every denomination be called the will of God. I've seen too much religion in the eyes of too many murderers.
In this sense, it is not hard to see why secularization is so often associated with liberation and enlightenment. More generally, religion, at least in stories it seems, became that which had to be deconstructed, that which either had to be understood as some historical fallacy, exposed as a malicious practice, or that had to somehow be justified, reinterpreted for this new era. You know, God didn't literally create the universe in 7 days. That happened over millions of years of evolution. Moses didn't part the Red Sea, it was just a natural phenomenon. We are not souls that were born from and will return to some divine realm. We are stardust and energy.
It's just energy vibrating very slowly, and there is no me. There never was.
And yet, many of these stories do not fully satisfy me either. It's hard to put into words why, but it is a similar issue like the one that I have with the more obvious religious propaganda films. Films that assume biblical text as literal reality, and tend to be grandiose on the precise matters where they should be humble. Except now the mysteries of the universe are no longer explained away by the hand of God, but by the movement of atoms. The top-down has become the bottom-up, one certainty replaced with another. It's not that I feel like I'm given the wrong answers. Perhaps I'm given too many. Can we really contain the infinite into the finite? Or are we just filling with noise that which should be left silent? Our society is noisy, a particular kind of noisy, stimulating like nature, but not grounding, full of energy, but rarely nurturing. It is the realm of human concern, though only as it is so often depicted in stories, in the material sense. Aimless construction, production, consumption, circling around, a design without any real regard to its own experience. And that's when I noticed them. Those churches on the horizon, seemingly abandoned, perpetually in the background, like relics of a time gone by, of a reality that has been dismantled. I live my life in parallel to them, but every now and then I step inside and I remember. A church too stands as a completely artificial construction and invokes a completely artificial experience. You can't really find spaces in nature that feel this hollow and empty. Not on the highest mountaintops, not in the deepest caves, which have much richer soundscapes than people usually assume. No, to be in a church is to experience something distinctively human. And more than that, it is also to experience a deliberate human effort. In cities stretching to the horizon, churches seem to be among the few spaces that specifically aim to cultivate silence and beauty, to make us feel something outside of ourselves, and to invite us to reflect on what that means to us. It's existential architecture, dedicated to that which is outside of our grasp, what is beyond our knowledge, beyond the realm of human experience. And this to me is exactly what the great existential films do. They offer us a space to experience that same silence, that void left by the longing for answers we will never receive, and to invoke that same beauty, that beauty that seems to be there for its own sake. They look at the world with reverence, because it should be looked at with reverence. They truly are films you don't just watch, they are films that you enter, like a cathedral. Personally, I enjoy churches the most when they are completely empty, when I'm just there by myself. I don't go in for a sermon or a lecture. I'm not there to perform some archaic ritual or participate in a communal experience. I don't want to say anything, I don't want to hear anything. I don't need convincing, I don't need answers. I just want to be there. I want to be in that space, just for a moment, and remind myself that the essence of our universe, of our existence, is fundamentally a mystery, that our consciousness cannot comprehend the entirety of being, that there is something out there that transcends us. Why silence? Why dedicate spaces and films to the emptiness at the heart of existence? Why allow for the indulgence in such despair? Well, I think it is because ultimately it is simply unavoidable. It is a part of who we are. It seeps into every aspect of our being. And I believe that we are humbled for the better when we remember, and grow into something worse when we forget. How exactly we go about this doesn't really matter. I grew up among these specific spaces, among these specific symbols and images, and even though I wasn't raised religious, they have probably left their imprint on me nonetheless, and therefore still have a certain metaphorical power for me. If I had been born in another culture or another religion, I'm sure it would have been different. The point is, I think, to have some concept of the transcendental, of something capable of overpowering us, overpowering our ego, our grandiosity, our hubris, whether it is the awe-inspiring force of the sun, or the image of some divine deity, as long as it serves to make us feel some humility, to emphasize that no one possesses absolute truth, and, perhaps above all, to let us contemplate the implications of the unknowable, and share in what is after all a distinctively human form of suffering. This for me is the greatest quality of existential films. They articulate that which we confide into silence. They lay bare our innermost thoughts, our most burning desires, and remind us that everyone will, at some point in their lives, encounter questions without answers. Everyone will face conflicts that are, in their essence, insolvable. Everyone carries that fundamental insecurity. That sorrow cannot be taken away, but it can be echoed. And in doing so, even though we may not be able to get a better understanding about the meaning of existence, the meaning of the universe, we do get a better understanding about what it means to be human.
If we could only see the beginning of his kingdom. But
he stands alone.
Nothing.
And who can oppose him?
Nothing ever.
Do something.
Jag vill ha vetskap. Inte tro, inte antaganden, utan vetskap. Jag vill att Gud räcker mig sin hand, avtäcker sitt ansikte och talar till mig.
Surely God heard their prayers as they died. But did he hear their screams?
Come on! Prove it!
How can I explain his silence to these people who have endured so much?
Show me something real!
He does whatever he pleases. He carries out his decree against me, and many such plans he still has in store.
Show me and I'll believe in you till the day I die. I swear. I'm calling on you.
Jag ropar till honom i mörkret.
I'm calling on you!
Men ibland är det som det inte fanns någon där.
That is why I am terrified before him. When I think of all this, I fear him. God has made my heart faint.
Gud, varför har du övergivit mig?
The Almighty is terrified.
Guide us.
Yet I am not silenced by the darkness, by the thick darkness that covers my face.
To the end of time.
Om vi kunde få trygghet. Så att vi vågade visa varandra ömhet. Om vi kunde tro på en sanning. Om vi kunde tro.
We can't know what the future will bring. We have to choose despite uncertainty. Wisdom is holding two contradictory truths in our mind simultaneously. Hope and despair.
You are now going to fulfill the most painful act of love that has ever been performed.
Hey everyone, thank you for making it all the way through this rather personal video of mine. I hope you get something meaningful out of it. Before you go, I wanted to let you know that you can now find an unabridged version of my Stories vs. Reality video on Nebula. Initially I had to release them in 3 separate parts because of the constraints I had at the time, but now I've remastered them into one single video. It's an hour and 15 minutes long, so it's basically a featured documentary on the nature of storytelling and the way it shapes our identities. You can watch the whole thing uninterrupted by any ads or sponsors on Nebula, our creator-owned streaming service where we get to do cool things like this and where you can watch a bunch of exclusive content from your favorite creators. You can get Nebula for free by signing up for CuriosityStream, which is also having a special holiday sale, meaning you can get both services with a 42% discount. That is less than $12 for a whole year of both CuriosityStream and Nebula. As you know, CuriosityStream is a streaming service with thousands of documentaries and non-fiction titles. One show I particularly recommend is Sacred Spaces, which has an episode on churches that explores some of the most beautiful cathedrals you'll ever see, and dives deep into the meaning of their existential architecture. Whereas CuriosityStream is all about big-budget, non-fiction productions like these. They also love independent creators, which is why they are helping us to grow our platform, and which is why we have this great deal right now to get both services for less than $12 a year. So if you'd rather be watching extra content instead of this ad, enjoy some fantastic documentaries, and help out my channel and that of many of the other creators you know and love, be sure to head on over to curiositystream.com/likestoriesofold to get the best deal in streaming today.